And so as someone with the skin, I feel like I could speak out on this. Here's my questions. Why, first of all, so many of y'all want to say that it wasn't murder. Like, so many of y'all were so quick to say it wasn't murder, that things happened. If that was the case, then why do none of the friends know what happened? Furthermore, Nancy Grace just released a CTO call. Anybody in their right mind, if you hear what was on that call in the background where they're asking, is someone dead? First things first, you're not going to call CTO. You're going to call 911, typically, if you're worried about someone. Secondly, why did you turn down Coast Guard when they asked if you needed the Coast Guard? If you are sinking, and if there is that shit going on in the background, like what they're asking about, is someone dead, you should say yes to any bit of help that you can get, right? I also think it's odd that all of them got rid of their social media. None of them have really had much of an explanation. They do what your typical white people do in those circumstances. Look at the Murdaugh case, and there was no one of color in that case. But because they were prominent Caucasians surrounding around that death of the girlfriend, they did everything they could to cover up and get him out of it. The same rules apply to this, and like in my head, the same rules apply to this. They were both situations were boating, and in those situations, someone unfortunately lost their life. But getting back to the Nolan case, hearing that voice, like hearing that recording of them asking for, or just asking if someone is dead in the background, how is it that you're clueless and you have no idea what could have happened to him? That call, like, there's a reason why Nancy Grace got her bob fixed to the heavens, honey. That thing wouldn't move in hurricane force winds. She knows something. Her gut tells her something, just like my gut has been telling me something has been going on with this case. It was too weird. It was too weird. And I got to be careful with how I say things, because y'all love to drag me through the mud anytime I talk out against Caucasians. So I'm trying to be careful with how I word this. But before I get in the shower, I've had a long day at work. Before I get in the shower, I really wanted to like put a little bit of 2 cents in your head with that, because I commented on Nancy Grace's video and already people have started coming for me. And all I did was comment, why did we call CTO and not 911? And several people commented and said, well, because there was no medical emergency. You fucking racist idiot. What do you mean there's no medical emergency? Open your fucking ears. And do you not hear them in the background asking if someone is dead? Are you that small-minded that you will forego any bit of the facts because you need your story to be the truth, where no one was murdered? If that was your youngin', if the roles were reversed, y'all, my God, as a white person, I can come out and say that. I know good and well if the roles were reversed, y'all would be dragging this through the mud. But because it was a group of Caucasians and it was an African-American person that passed away, all of you small-minded, closed, racist people, you immediately want to assume that he died of like natural causes, or he caused his own death, or it wasn't a murder. I will always stand on the right side of history. I promise you. I don't care how many people cancel me, how many people come for me. My boys will know that their mother always stood on the right side of history. I have said that there was something fishy about this case from the moment it came out in the news. And as soon as I posted something about it, y'all came for me. And I'm just here to say that I stand with Nancy. There's a reason why Nancy is as into this as she was the Casey Anthony shit. Okay? She knows, because her spidey senses are tingling just like my spidey senses are tingling. If a youngin' ever went with me on a boat, it don't matter if they were black, white, brown, purple, green, blue, square, triangle, rectangle, obtuse, caboose, papatoose, you name it, that baby's coming home with me and my family. I don't care if anybody got in a fight or an altercation. If you go on the boat with me and my husband, I'm bringing you back. Scout's honor. Promise. Promise. There's something, you never leave anybody, anywhere, especially on water. Y'all can get the fuck out of here with your excuses. That's the thing about you racist people. Y'all will make an excuse out of anything to justify any type of actions. Every single time. There's always an excuse. Just as soon as something happens in the media when an African American or a brown skinned person is involved, you're quick to say, stupid is as stupid does, right? All those things. But you didn't say that about the young girl that died with the Murdochs on the boat. Everybody was boohooing tears about her dying. It was so tragic, right? But we don't have that same sympathy for this poor youngin' who had his whole life ahead of him. It doesn't matter what the familial situations were, because I saw that being thrown around. That doesn't matter. He went out with a group of friends. He should have came back with a group of friends, alive. And if he ever went missing, their first thing should have been, we need to find him. We need to know what's going on. How is it that we all of a sudden, everybody's got amnesia and nobody knows what happened to him and nobody can find him? Make that make sense. Those are the type of people that I don't want my children around. Y'all are so twisted. Y'all are so twisted. I cannot wait for the truth to come out about this poor baby. Just to prove to a lot of you small-minded, closed-minded, racist people, how many more people have to die for you to see that there is a common denominator here? There's a problem. I wouldn't let my own children who are Caucasian go on a boat with a group full of other Caucasian children. Let that sink in. Will not allow it. The only time I allow it is if I'm there. That's it. I pray that some of y'all find a little bit of brains in between your ears. And I pray that some of y'all find a little bit of empathy too, because all of you closed-minded, small-minded racists are also you claim to be Christians. Y'all are the most evil people I have ever seen in my entire life. Evil. Evil people. And that right there is why so many young people, and I don't even think I'm young, but I can include myself in this. There's a reason why me and my family don't go to church every Sunday, every Wednesday like I did when I grew up. Your body is your temple. Jesus is right here. Those of you that go to church on Sundays and Wednesdays, and the ones that post your Bible verses or, you know, live, laugh, love, eat, pray, love, whatever on your walls, you're the same people. You're the same people. I'm disgusted with y'all. Like, to everyone with brown skin, please let me formally apologize, because I do not share the views and the thought patterns and anything to do with what the people that share my skin color have. But I apologize for these small-minded people, because as someone who was raised around nothing but small-minded racists, I grew a brain myself and decided what I wanted to pick as right and wrong. And I'm so sorry that not all of us feel this way, but I promise you, I feel so passionately about this that I will do everything that I can in my power to never stop running my lips to help just shed light onto what y'all go through. I love you, but I had to do this. I got to get in the shower. Bye.
Nancy Grace has had her producer, Sydney, enhance the CTO audio. Now, here's my question. Why do we have to have somebody white enhance the audio?
Is in that autopsy.
Now I really want to see the other autopsy to see, is there trauma to the body? Is there something that happened?
I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it.
I have no doubt that what we're listening to and what she did is credible.
Not only has the timeline been analyzed by the Cajun Navy, the U.S. Cajun Navy, based on all sorts of statistical data, new photos are emerging. Take a look at this photo before we go to the Cajun Navy.
A photo just surfaced showing boats tied together, side by side, off Horn Island, and buried in it, a detail that could change how this entire timeline gets read. The United Cajun Navy just released a new report. Not an investigation. They say so themselves, plainly, up front. A compiled timeline built entirely from photos and videos the public sent them after they asked for help. And inside that report is a photo, time-stamped to around 4:50 in the afternoon, that appears to show a young black man in blue swim trunks on that shoreline, after GPS data shows the boat Nolan came out on had already left the island. Nobody, including the people who released it, can tell you for certain that's Nolan. We're going to walk through exactly what this report does and doesn't show, and we're also going to fact-check a viral reaction video that's pulled millions of people into this case over the past week, separating what's actually documented from what's just conviction dressed up as fact. We're also bringing you a third audio enhancement, this one from inside Nancy Grace's own show, and a real, fair question that comes with it about who gets believed and why, plus a new set of claimed phrases we're going to hold to the exact same standard as everything else in this case. This is everything that's changed since our last update, laid out the way we always do it, confirmed, kept separate from claimed.
Now, you saw Janetta Brantley. You've heard her. I have no reason to disbelieve anything she's saying.
So if I'm prosecuting this, I'm worried that I need a witness in 2026 to exclude the possibility that it's either AI generated or doctored, just like you suggested. And I think that she's very credible, but I think we need to go one step further. The other concern I have, Nancy, is if the independent autopsy is showing inconclusive death results, now I really want to see the other autopsy to see, is there trauma to the body? Is there something that happened? These are the concerns I would have as a prosecutor. But we've now opened the doors to these guys may in fact have committed obstruction of justice.
Hold on. You're putting the cart before the horse. Before we talk about obstructions such as allegedly lying or covering something up, you've already mentioned two distinct lines of inquiry. One is that the audio that Janetta Brantley enhanced innocently, I believe, had been already AI or doctored. Okay, let's follow that through to its logical conclusion. You just throw that out there like a stink bomb at the circle. You know what a circle meeting is, right? In the United Methodist Church, all the ladies have circle meetings. Okay. To suggest this was doctored before Janetta got it means it had to have been doctored or AI created by who? The Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. No, don't just go, that doesn't work in court, Burkhart's. You can't just throw, that's like the side defense. Some other dude did it. What dude? What are you talking about? So you're saying AI doctored by who? If it's not Janetta, then who? She got it. The same sound that was released by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. What? You think they doctored it?
There is nothing normal about this case. And if
that's not what I asked you. I'm asking you to explain your premise, and you're not doing it.
I said if I were a prosecutor, I would want to be able to establish with expert testimony that what we are listening to is real. And I would want a witness, because I'm telling you, with this case, with as viral as it's been, I'm not disagreeing that it's real. I'm saying I would want to be able to bolster that very credible woman's testimony, and she is very credible. I have no doubt that what we're listening to and what she did is credible.
Before we get into any specific photo, We need to understand what this report actually is, because the word report has already led some people to assume more authority than the people who made it are actually claiming. The Cajun Navy's own vice president was direct about this on air. This is a timeline, not an investigation. They're not investigators. What they did was ask their followers, anyone who'd been on Horn Island that day, anyone with photos or video, to send it in. They compiled what came back into one organized, digestible document. Their own words. Maybe it's helpful. Maybe law enforcement already has all of it, and it's nothing new to them. They were upfront that they couldn't verify timestamps independently in most cases, that some images could have been screenshotted rather than shot directly, and that any conclusion drawn from unverified material has to be labeled as exactly that. That's a genuinely responsible way to release crowdsourced material, and it's worth acknowledging before we go further, because it's not how most viral content in this case has been handled. Here's the actual significance of what they put together, stripped of any hype. One image in the report shows several boats anchored close together, tied off, with people scattered across and between them. Boats, the report labels 1, 2, 3, and X, with a note about which one is believed to be the Triton, the boat Nolan came out on. The point being made isn't that this photo proves anything happened. It's narrower and more useful than that. It's a visual record of exactly how many potential witnesses were physically present, clustered together, close enough to have seen something at some point that afternoon. A commentator watching that photo put it plainly. When you see a cluster of boats like that, tied together, full of people, you're not looking at evidence of a crime. You're looking at a list of witnesses nobody has fully worked through yet. There's a second observation in the report worth taking seriously, and it's easy to miss because it sounds mundane. Several of the submitted photos show people in water up to their chest, even their neck, not wading, closer to treading water. The Cajun Navy's vice president flagged this, specifically because Horn Island's underwater slope is aggressive. You can go from shallow to genuinely deep water in just a few steps. And once you're in that deeper water, a current or a riptide has real power over you in a way it doesn't in waist-deep shallows. That's not a claim about what happened to Nolan specifically. It's context about how much less margin for error existed that afternoon than a lot of the casual, everybody was just hanging out, framing has suggested. To be fair to the other side of this, a veteran trial lawyer watching the same report pushed back hard on how much weight any of it should actually carry. His point: none of these photos have verified timestamps, none of them have been checked for enhancement or manipulation, and without that verification, none of it is reliable enough to build a real case on. That's a fair, technically accurate criticism. The counter-argument, and we think it's also fair, is that every investigation has to start with unverified material before it becomes verified. A photo with an unconfirmed timestamp isn't worthless. It's a lead that still needs the actual legwork of confirmation behind it. Both of those things are true at once, and we're going to hold that same tension through everything else in this update. A crowdsourced timeline isn't evidence in the courtroom sense. It's also not nothing. It's the shape of where more real evidence might actually be sitting if anyone does the work to go find it. If you were on Horn Island that day and have photos or video you haven't shared anywhere yet, this is exactly the kind of thing that's actually moved this case forward before. Worth sending in, even if you don't think it matters.
Nancy Grace has had her producer, Sydney, enhance the C-tow audio. Now, here's my question. Why do we have to have somebody white enhance the audio when Janetta Brantley did it so brilliantly, does the same thing, and now Nancy is like, look, I know Sydney. She would never do anything. She has no horse in this race, you know, like one of her little colloquialisms. But listen to this real quick.
We have a lot of questions that have to be answered. Is this sound real? Has it been enhanced? Who enhanced it? Was it AI or doctored before Janetta Brantley pumped it up so we can hear it? I want you to hear another version.
You can see that I have the CTO channel completely muted, so we're only listening to the callers. Then I go through and simply raise the volume of all of the chatter we hear at the beginning of the call.
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our village pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership.
What's crazy is this time I do hear, and as you can see in the text, want me to cover him up. Cover who up? You hear Nolan. We hear, oh my God. We hear Nolan, don't die. We hear get in the boat. We hear shut the F up. We hear damn it, Bart. It's there. Okay. But my question is, why do we all slander Janetta Brantley? Okay. She's the one who needs to have a defamation case. Now you have all these boys and Sarah J. Fields and all these people starting up Give, Send, Goes because they want to grift and they want to make money off of this because they see that comforting white fragility is very financially beneficial, right? But my question is, why does it take a person, a white person who did the exact same thing that Janetta Brantley did for us to say, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I think it's real now? It was real when Janetta did it, and make sure you support her. She is a beautiful, amazing, brilliant audio engineer who gave the world our first listen at what was really going on.
Nancy Grace's own show had a producer, identified on air as Sydney, do her own independent pass at the disputed CTO audio, muting the actual callers entirely and just raising the volume on everything else. That makes at least 3 separate people working independently who've now attempted their own enhancement of this same recording. Before we get anywhere near what Sydney claims to hear, there's a real, fair question worth sitting with. A commentator reacting to this segment asked plainly, why does the same kind of work, running distorted background audio through an enhancement pass, get treated with more instant credibility coming from Nancy Grace's own in-house producer than it did when Janetta Brantley, a named independent audio engineer with real documented experience in dialogue cleanup, did essentially the same thing first, on her own, under her own name, with the same honest caveat that it was her personal interpretation. That's not a sweeping claim about a whole group of people. It's a specific, fair question about 2 named individuals doing comparable work, and it deserves the same answer either way. Both versions get the same standard of scrutiny, the same skepticism, applied evenly. Now here's what actually matters most, and we need to be exact, because Sydney's version reportedly claims to pick up more than any previous enhancement has. A name, oh my God, don't die, get in the boat, language we're not going to repeat in full, and 2 phrases that deserve individual attention, something that sounds like a reference to covering someone up, and something that sounds like a name said in anger, Bart's name, specifically. We're applying the exact same standard to this claim that we've applied to every enhanced audio claim in this case, no matter who produced it. This is one person's personal interpretation of distorted background noise, not a forensic transcript, and it hasn't been verified by anyone with the tools to actually confirm audio at this level of specificity. We already have a documented reason for real caution here. A digital forensics expert who examined an earlier enhancement of this exact recording found it ran 20 seconds longer than the original file, with a different digital fingerprint entirely. meaning at least one prior claim about this recording has already been shown not to match the source material. There's a technical reason this keeps happening. Simply raising volume on background noise doesn't add information. It amplifies everything equally, including wind, water, and overlapping voices that aren't speech at all. The human brain is extremely good at pattern matching ambiguous sound into language, the same mechanism behind hearing words in static. That doesn't mean nobody's hearing anything real. It means volume alone can't tell real speech from that effect, which is exactly why actual forensic audio work uses tools well beyond simply turning something up. We need to say something directly about the phrase involving Bart's name, because he's a real, named, uncharged person who's already been through exactly this once before. His own attorney has disputed earlier claims from an earlier enhancement, and his family says he's been doxxed and threatened over it. Repeating a new, unconfirmed claim naming him again, without the same weight of caveat, would be the same mistake we've refused to make throughout this case. Nobody has forensically confirmed this phrase, not this version, not the last one. To be fair, none of this means Sydney did anything wrong. People hear what they genuinely hear, and an honest interpretation isn't dishonest just because it's unconfirmed. The problem is, what happens once it leaves her hands, stripped of the caveat that made it responsible in the first place? 3 different people, 3 different results, all still unconfirmed. That's not a pattern converging on truth. It's evidence this recording is too degraded for casual listening to settle, no matter how many times people try. Somebody heard it again isn't the same as it's now more confirmed. Confirmation comes from forensic verification, not repetition. And across 3 attempts now, this recording still hasn't gotten that.
The Nolan Wells case, let me tell you, as a former head county prosecutor and a former assistant prosecutor that did homicide work, where I think the prosecutor, Angel Myers McGrath, is making a huge mistake. So look, everyone's going crazy here. I disagree with her approach to media relations and educating the public. Now, I get when she said that she was protecting the integrity of the investigation. I've done that myself. But I had very strong relationships with the minority community. And when we had police involved, minority shootings, they were first people that I met with and gave me the distance and breathing room to conduct the investigation without any fanfare, people in front of the cameras, marching in the streets, etc. That obviously that trust has not been established in, from what I'm seeing in the comments and the millions of views that I'm getting on my videos, a great degree of distrust in Mississippi. And you have to address that as a public official. It's a very real thing. Whether it's truthful or not, you need to address it. So here's my thing. You're not compromising an investigation by getting up and combating misinformation in the public, number one. How many search warrants have been issued? I wrote a list here. What electronic data has been done? What communication data warrants have gone out? How many? I'm not asking you for what and what you're looking for, but just give us an idea of what you're doing that way. Have you gone to the courts for those search warrants? How many witness interviews have occurred? How many tips and leads have you received? Because I'm going to imagine it's been an amazing amount, and the public doesn't know that. You have to run all those leads down. What experts have been called in? Maybe what area? Is it forensics, toxicology, audio, video? These would all be important things. You're not giving away any information by telling the public what it is you're doing that way. How many photos and videos have you had to review? Because I imagine people are submitting stuff all over the place, and it takes a lot of time to go through that digital record, authenticate it, and see if there's anything of evidentiary value. How about satellite imagery or any other cooperating agencies? And who are they? That may be useful to know. Oh, you're really being serious. You're bringing in other law enforcement agencies. How many law enforcement assets are you have out there? How many people? How many man hours? You need to do a press conference at the end of all this and lay it all out. While the grand jury is a secret proceeding, and I get that people aren't entitled to that because it protects the innocent, and that's what a grand jury is supposed to do and be secret, doesn't mean you can't do a press conference. I did it in high-profile, racially involved cases where I went out and said, here's a 2-hour press conference to tell you everything we did, how we did it, and why we came to the conclusions we came to. But well before that, Madam District Attorney, I would get out there and make sure you're with the community and letting the community leaders know so they can support you that you're doing the right thing. Right now, we're all out here and we just don't know. It looks like nothing's going on. I know that's not true. Correct the record.
Most of the criticism aimed at Jackson County's district attorney has come from commentators, family advocates, and people online. This one's different, and it deserves to be heard on its own terms, because it's coming from someone with the actual professional background to make it credibly. A former county prosecutor, someone who's personally handled homicide cases and led investigations involving minority communities, laid out a specific, professional critique of how District Attorney Angel Myers-McElrath has handled public communication in this case. His core point isn't that she's doing anything wrong with the investigation itself. It's that her approach to the public has created a vacuum, and vacuums, in a case like this one, get filled with speculation, not patience. He was direct about his own experience. In high-profile cases involving police shootings in minority communities, the first thing he did was build a relationship with community leaders, meeting with them directly, earning enough trust that they gave him room to actually investigate without the pressure of cameras and public marches demanding answers in real time. His observation about this case, watching from outside, that trust clearly hasn't been established here, and the volume of public distrust he's seeing, measured, in his words, by the millions of views this case keeps generating, is something a public official in this position has to actively address, whether or not the distrust is fully justified. Here's the actual substance of his critique, and it's more specific and more useful than most of what gets said about this case online. He's not asking the DA to release evidence, name suspects, or say anything that would compromise the grand jury process. He's making a much narrower point. You can tell the public what you're doing without telling them what you've found. How many search warrants have been issued? What kinds of communication or electronic data warrants have gone out, and roughly how many? How many witness interviews have actually happened? How many tips and leads have come in? Which, given how this case has generated call volume in the hundreds per day, according to the family's own legal team, is almost certainly a real number worth sharing. What kinds of experts have been brought in? Forensics, toxicology, audio, digital, without needing to say what they've concluded. How many photos and videos investigators have had to review and authenticate? Whether other agencies are involved, and which ones. None of that reveals findings. All of it reveals effort. And right now, from the outside, there's no visible difference between an investigation moving carefully and an investigation not moving at all. He also made a specific, useful distinction about the grand jury process itself. It being secret doesn't mean the DA can't hold a press conference at all. He described doing exactly that himself in comparably high-profile, racially charged cases. A full accounting, laid out publicly, of everything the investigation actually did and how it reached its conclusions, once the process concluded. Secrecy during the grand jury phase and total silence beforehand are two different things, and conflating them, in his professional opinion, is part of what's created this specific vacuum. His closing point is the one worth sitting with the longest. He's not saying nothing is happening in this investigation. He's fairly confident real work is underway. He's saying that from where the public is standing right now, it looks like nothing is happening, and that gap between what's probably true and what it looks like is entirely within a DA's power to close, without compromising a single part of the actual case.
Look at this. Check out what you're seeing. Look at all the boats surrounding where Nolan was. Leave up the photo out to Caitlin Becker, senior national correspondent, New York Post, star of New York Postcast, their new podcast. Caitlin, what are we seeing?
Well, what we're seeing here comes from this new report from the United Cajun Navy, and you're seeing several boats strung together. This is one of the first images that we've seen of this certain configuration of boats there. They're all identified, one of which was the boat that Nolan came out there on. There's several others kind of anchored with it and tied up, which begs the question of where was Nolan when this photo was taken? Because it's unclear if he's actually in it. What time was this photo actually taken? So what you're seeing here is, as you said, a potential pool of witnesses.
Hey, Caitlin, look at this. There's boat number 1. There's boat X. There's boat number 2. There's boat number 3. And there's a boat from which the photo is taken. Now, look in the water. There much has been made. Nolan Wells was drinking. Okay, well, apparently everybody was. They all have containers, open containers in the water. Okay, as far as I know, that's not a felony. Boat number 1, full of people. Boat X, full of people. Boat number 2, full of people. Boat number 3, full of people. People on the boat from which the photo was taken. Some of these boats tied together. You know what that means in my world, Caitlin Becker, joining us from the New York Post? Let me see, Caitlin, please. That means witnesses. See, when I look at that, I see witnesses. Other people say, hey, there's people having a good time. I see witnesses. Do you see all those people?
And a lot of
Caitlin?
them.
Who were they? Have they been spoken to? Have they been polygraphed? What can they tell me?
That is the question, right? We don't know from an investigative standpoint who has been spoken to, exactly who is in this photo, and what they have or haven't told law enforcement, because there hasn't been really any transparency there. But from what our reporting has showed, there have been dozens of people who have spoken to law enforcement as witnesses. But Nancy, we don't know if it's any of these people that you're seeing in this little cove area right here. And the timing, I think, is really important, because these images are taken right around, I think the timeline's about 3:30-ish, 4:30-ish, when the boat that Nolan came out there on leaves and starts taking on water. That's one of the pegs for the timeline. When these photos were actually taken, that is a peg for a timeline. But what we don't know is where Nolan is. There he is. You can see that image right there. But we don't know is where Nolan was when that first image that we saw with all of those boats kind of tied together, when that was taken.
You are seeing a photo obtained by our friends at the United Cajun Navy. And speaking of the United Cajun Navy, joining me now is Brian Trasher, Vice President, United Cajun Navy. And for all of you attacking the United Cajun Navy, let's see that aerial footage they provided us. This is from the Cajun Navy describing their search, their aerial search. They spotted Nolan Wells's body. They have been integral in the search for Nolan Wells and helping elucidate the facts as we know them. Brace yourself, Trasher. Everybody else is getting death threats. You might as well join the party. To you, Brian Trasher, the United Cajun Navy has come up with a timeline. Now, did I hear Caitlin Becker from the New York Post correctly that that photo where the boats are named Boat 1, Boat 2, Boat 3, and Boat X, is that from you guys, the United Cajun Navy?
First of all, I want to thank you for calling this report what it is, and it's a timeline. And some people have called it an investigative report, and that's not accurate because, as you know, we're not investigators. And what we did, Nancy, was we asked our followers, say, hey, if anybody was there that day, you have pictures, videos, whatever, send it to us just so we can go through it, see if there's anything relevant. We took all that information and compiled it into just one digestible report of things we thought were relevant and could be helpful. Maybe they're not. Maybe law enforcement's already seen all this and it's nothing new to them. But we just wanted to be transparent about what we received. So going back to your question, The pictures that we received, we did not, as an organization, take any of these photographs. These are all images that we received from people who were trying to help us out and trying to help Nolan's family out.
So you asked the public for help and you got it. You got a treasure trove of photos. And I find this one significant. Guys, we've got an all-star panel, and I would like the all-star panel to look at their screens because I've talked about this before, Brian Trasher, and I'm frankly fed up with attacks on the United Cajun Navy. They're doing something, which is more than all of the haters can say. They're doing something. They have amassed evidence. They have created a timeline to the best of their ability. They have shared it with us, unlike the autopsy that is complete is being kept secret from us. That said, they're helping. Why trash them? That's, I'm not a shrink. I can't answer that. Let's look at this photo and determine what, if anything, we can discern. Brian, you and I have talked many, many times, and I told you about a serial killer I finally convicted on one case. The jury convicted him. And I proved a lot because of one earring I found in a particular location. The victim was wearing an earring, and the other earring had been sliced out of her ear, and I found it somewhere else. And I learned a lot because of where it was. Now, don't even bother to tell me that this photo that you have produced is not probative of something. The cluster of boats. Number one, I see a lot of witnesses. Trasher, do we know what time this photo was taken?
We don't know definitively times on all these because even though they're time stamped, it could be a time when it was screenshotted, stamped, not necessarily the original photograph. So we were very careful to denote that in our report that we can't verify timelines, although based on shadows and positions and things like that, we can determine that some of these, as noted, are taken in the late afternoon. One of the things I thought was interesting about some of these photos we got, Nancy, was that a lot of the photos we had seen before were people like in waist deep water. Well, some of the photos we provided show people up, water up to their chest, almost to their neck, and that's not really wading. That's treading water, in my opinion, and that I thought might have been significant to know that many people were, perhaps enjoying some libations, but also in water that might have been a little too deep just to be playing in.
Good point. You also said something else really smart. And I certainly do not want to rely on this, but sometimes you have to, you take the evidence as you find it and you make the most of what you've got. You said you could tell this was late in the afternoon because of the shadowing. I wonder if the tide could tell me anything because how high up the water is. But these people holding drinks, they're not treading water, Trasher. They're standing there. These people are not treading water, and the water is up to their armpits. Is that the photo you're talking about as to where you think some of them are treading water, or are there other photos?
The photo at the top, yeah, you're right. It's about up to their armpit. I think there was one later in the report that that showed some of the kids. This was a screenshot of a social media post, and there's 3 boats visible, one fourth boat further in the distance, but a lot of kids on one boat. I say kids, young people on one boat, some on the boat, some in the water. And some of them, it looks, maybe up to the armpit, but some of them, depending on their own height, it looks like it's, I could see a girl holding something in her hand and the water looks to be pretty close to her neck. So that's pretty far out. Now, we've said several times that Horn Island has a very aggressive slope. So you can be in shallow water and deep water within just a few steps. And once you get into that deep water, you're not as able to keep your feet on the ground if a current comes and pulls you, or God forbid, a riptide comes and drags you. So that's why we thought it was significant to know that they were socializing in fairly deep water.
Can we go back to the main photo where the boats are numbered 1, 2, 3, X? Isn't it true, Brian Trasher, that these boats are easily identifiable by I call it a tail number, like you would a plane? Every boat has to be registered or supposed to be registered. It has a number on it. It often has a name like Triton. One was named Mac Daddy. There were other names. They're registered, and you know who the owner is, and the owner can tell us who was on the boat that day. Is that correct?
Theoretically, yeah. If you can make out the registration number or the name of the boat, if the vessel's name is registered, along with the registration number. Usually that's sometimes only on a Coast Guard document, but sometimes on a state registration, you can put the vehicle, the boat name if it's asked for, or if you have one. So that is all possible. I'm told, and we're asked to compare notes with the sheriff's office, which we're doing. But I was told that there's been a lot of people that have been contacted and interviewed, and there's a lot of people who were there that day that voluntarily came forward to tell what they know. And because they might have seen their boats and pictures, said, "Oh, we might want to go ahead and call them, and let them know, where we were, who was with us, and what we know." So I commend those people for coming forward, because it's not always easy.
To Marie Pereira joining us in addition to the Vice President of the United Cajun Navy, who has been there from the get-go trying to help solve the case. Marie Pereira, registered nurse, which is important. But she is a criminal defense attorney and domestic violence expert. She is a violence expert certified advocate. Marie, you saw that. All those people in my book are witnesses.
Forget the photos for a second. Forget the audio. There's a timeline sitting inside the Cajun Navy's report that nobody has actually walked through end to end, out loud, and put next to itself. So let's do that right now, piece by piece, the way it would actually get built on an evidence board. Start with the call. Somewhere after 3, before 4:30, a call goes out to Sea Tow. We know that much for certain. What we're told next is that the tow gets canceled, not because the boat fixed itself, but because someone reached Bart Edmiston directly, and he stepped in as, in the Cajun Navy's own words, a good Samaritan, towing the boat himself instead of waiting on the paid service. Fine. That's a plausible, even admirable version of events. But here's the detail that actually deserves your full attention. Somebody called Sea Tow back to cancel, and according to what's been reported, that call came from the boat owner's grandfather, not from anyone actually on the water, not from anyone who could see the boat with their own eyes in that exact moment. A grandfather reached separately, relaying secondhand that help was no longer needed. Now, there's an innocent explanation offered for this too, that the grandfather simply had a stronger signal than the kids out on the water, and someone reached him first because of that, not because anything was being coordinated or hidden. That's plausible. It's also, notice, the same shape of explanation we keep running into over and over in this case. A real, documented oddity, sitting right next to a completely reasonable-sounding reason it might not mean anything at all. We're not going to pretend that pattern doesn't exist. We're also not going to pretend a reasonable explanation automatically closes the question, especially when nobody's actually confirmed it. It's still, as of tonight, someone's account of why it happened, not a verified record of it. Now here's where the actual, documented controversy starts to surface, and it circles right back to a name you've heard before in this case, in a way you haven't seen yet, Katie. At the very beginning of this case, the public was told, repeatedly, that nobody in the friend group knew who Katie was. And that's not actually the whole story, not by a long way. We're going to give that its own full moment in a few minutes, because it deserves to be laid out carefully instead of rushed. For now, hold on to this. The "we don't know her" version of events is not the only version that's been told. Now overlay the hard timeline on top of that, because this is where it gets genuinely difficult to wave away. According to the friends, the boat left at 4:31, a number that should be independently verifiable through GPS, and has been. By 5 o'clock, according to their own account, nobody in that friend group was still on the island at all. But a witness has put someone matching the described scene at Horn Island as late as 7:30 that evening, with no sign of Nolan anywhere, not floating in the water near shore, not on the sand. If he'd already gone under by then, wouldn't there be some visible trace by 7:30, hours after his friends say they'd already left? There's a real, honest answer to that specific question too, and it's worth including because it's not a dodge, it's forensic reality. A body doesn't necessarily float where you'd expect it to. Depending on water temperature and what's around it, a body can sink and stay down, or worse, end up caught beneath one of the hundreds of boats anchored in that same stretch of water that day. With that many vessels clustered together, a search team looking for someone on the surface could miss him entirely, even while looking directly at the water he was in. That's Brian Trasher's own read on it, actually, the Cajun Navy's vice president, the same person who put this whole timeline together in the first place. And it's Trasher who's going to matter most in what comes next, because when we finally get to Katie's part of this story properly, it's his own report that's sitting closest to the center of it. So here's the actual picture, once you lay every piece of this timeline next to every other piece, the way an investigator actually would. A canceled tow, relayed through someone who wasn't there. A documented gap between when the friends say everyone had left and when someone else says the scene was still active. A physical explanation for why a body might not have been visible even if it was there the whole time. And underneath all of it, one more thread we haven't pulled yet, the one that starts with Katie and ends with Brian Trasher's own words about her. None of these pieces, alone, proves anything happened beyond a tragic accident. Put together, they're exactly the kind of thing that makes an investigator lean forward instead of closing the file. And we're not done laying them out yet.
Katie has dry snitched, y'all. Here we see Katie's Snapchat where she's wearing a teal swimsuit and she's with a girl in a blue and white striped swimsuit. On this video of the 3 boats, you're going to see a girl in a blue and white striped swimsuit right here on Bart's boat. And right next to her with the same long wet hair is a girl in a teal swimsuit on Bart's boat. Make sure you have your brightness turned all the way up because here we have Katie in a teal swimsuit and look at her head. She is wearing a white hat. Oh, look, the video of the boat getting towed. Teal swimsuit, white hat. And that's not all, folks. Again, turn your brightness all the way up because right here, we've got somebody wearing red trunks. Oh, and look what we have here. Red trunks. And here's those same red trunks on the shore right after the fight with Tristan. Katie is claiming that she allegedly caught a ride home with somebody named Marty McGrath. It just so happens that a Marty McGrath is the co-owner of the Biloxi Bay RV Resort and Marina in St. Martin. Here it is, and my, that is a massive dock way out in the water. And would you look at that? It's right next to the grandparents' house. Now, in that report with the GPS coordinates, didn't they say that they went southwest towards St. Martin Bayou? Yeah, that's right, it did. And it also took them 45 minutes to get to that boat ramp over there. That only takes about 6 minutes on land.
We promised you Katie's part of this story properly, so let's do exactly that. Not speculation, not visual matching from a stranger's video, but what's actually been said, by name, by people who were genuinely part of this. Start with the earliest public account, because it came before almost anything else in this case. A post from Katie's own sister. In it, she said Katie had a conversation with Nolan, and that Katie assumed he was getting ready to get on the boat he'd come out on. Katie made it home separately, on another boat, with different people. Her sister's words, Katie assumed the friends telling him to get on would not have left without him. That's the first version of Katie's side of this, and notice exactly what it does and doesn't claim. It doesn't say Katie watched him board. It says she assumed he did, based on hearing his friends call for him, the same way anyone would reasonably assume a friend group wouldn't actually leave someone behind. Later, that same account came directly from Katie herself, not secondhand. She sat down, face to face, with Christine and told her, in person, what she remembered. According to Christine, Katie said that when she and Nolan said their goodbyes, he told her he intended to head back and rejoin his friends. She didn't personally watch him get on that boat. She's describing what he told her he planned to do, not something she witnessed happen after they parted ways. Two versions of Katie's account, arriving through two completely different paths, one through her sister, weeks apart from one through Christine directly, and they agree with each other on the exact same specific point. She heard him say he was going back. She never saw him actually do it. Now put that next to Warren's account, because this is where the real, documented tension in this case actually lives. Not in a stranger's theory, in the gap between two honest-sounding accounts from people who were actually there. Warren has said, directly, on camera, that Nolan was asked multiple times to get on the boat, and that Nolan verbally refused. His own words, according to Warren, "No, I'm staying out here. I'm going to ride in with somebody else." Go back through both versions of Katie's account one more time, carefully. Not once, in either version, not her sister's early post, not her own words to Christine, does she describe Nolan actually saying that. She describes hearing the group call for him. She describes assuming he'd get on because of that. She never describes him answering them out loud, refusing, the way Warren's account has him doing in such specific, quotable language. That's not a small gap once you actually see it laid out. It's possible Katie simply wasn't close enough, or paying attention at the exact second, to hear whatever Nolan actually said back to his friends. That's a completely reasonable, human explanation. But it's also possible these are two genuinely different versions of that final minute. One where Nolan made a clear, deliberate, spoken choice to stay, heard by the group. One where nobody who's actually spoken publicly ever heard him say anything back at all. We're not going to tell you which one is accurate, because nobody outside that moment actually knows. What we are going to tell you is that this is the real, substantive question sitting inside Katie's part of this story, not what swimsuit she was wearing in someone else's video, not a stranger's theory about a marina owner. A quiet, consistent, twice-told account from the one person who was actually with Nolan last that doesn't quite match the version everyone else has been repeating.
The goal of today's protest, I feel like, will be just to say his name. Yes, sir, Nolan Wells. For me, this means a whole lot because I have my kids in this community too.
Hey, Nolan Wells. I'm a mom. I have two sons, so it hit home for me.
Nolan Wells could have easily been my grandson.
Yes, sir,
I feel like today's testament is that we want answers. It's not about vengeance. It's not about accusations. It's about the truth and it's about transparency.
We're going to stand behind the family, and that's why we're out here. A lot of times, these stories go unnoticed.
Because Nolan Wells is not the only one. There has been a long historic string of young black men losing their life under very suspicious circumstances.
I am the family of Emmett Till. And my family is here in support of what's going on because this young man should not be dead.
So I know him personally as a kid before he went out to college. It's hard in this generation to find kids that still say yes sir, no sir. And when he came to me and wanted to work, he said, you know, my mom and dad told me I got to get my own money. And I said, but when you go out to college, I want you to make good choices and decisions, set you up for a lifetime. And he said, yes, sir. That says a lot about his home life. It says a lot about his parents, and it says a lot about him. The things that he did while he was here on earth, it left a statement in a place in a lot of people's heart. Life is precious, no matter what color you are.
That's a fact.
We just need to get to the facts of what really happened. That's really what it's about. The facts. It's not about the color of the skin. It's about sticking to the facts of whatever it is. And if it's something that happened as a mistake, then just let's speak about it. Let's talk about it. That's it. I'd just like to say to him and his soul, man, rest in peace. And we always love you, man. You did everything you could while you were here, and you did a great job. That's it.
We've spent this entire video in the weeds. Timelines, audio, photos, contradictions. Before we go any further, We want to slow all the way down and just let the people who actually gathered for Nolan speak for themselves. At a recent gathering held in his name, one mother explained why she'd shown up in words that need no embellishment from us at all. She said the goal of that day was simple, just to say his name. She said it hit home for her specifically because she has two sons of her own in that same community, and that Nolan could have easily been her grandson.
I have my kids in this
Her
community
point
too.
about why they were there wasn't about
I'm a
vengeance,
mom. I have two
and it
sons.
wasn't about accusing
So
anyone.
it hit home for
It was
me.
about the truth and
Nolan
about
Wells could have easily
transparency.
been my grandson.
Nothing more complicated than that.
I
She
feel like
also
today's
said something
testament is
that
that we
deserves to
want
sit on its
answers.
own for a
It's
second.
not about vengeance. It's
Nolan's
not about
case
accusations.
isn't
It's about the
isolated.
truth and it's about
That
transparency.
there's a
We're gonna stand
long,
behind the family,
documented
and
history
that's why
of
we're out
young
here.
black men losing their lives
A lot
under
of times,
circumstances that
these
never got
stories
fully explained.
go
And that
unnoticed.
history
Because
is
Nolan Wells is
exactly
not the only
why
one.
a case
There has
like
been
this
a
one
long,
doesn't stay
long
contained
string,
to
historic
one
string
family,
of
one
young black
island,
men
one afternoon.
losing their life under
Someone at
very
that same
suspicious
gathering
circumstances.
identified herself as
I
family
am the
of
family of
Emmett
Emmett
Till
Till.
and said she was there
And my
specifically
family is here
because
in
of him.
support of what's going on
Because a
because
young
this young
man
man
like
should not
Nolan
be dead.
should not be dead. That comparison
So I know in
isn't
person as a
something
kid
this
before he went out
channel
to college.
invented
It's
for a
hard in this
headline.
generation to find kids
It's one that's
that
been
still say
drawn
yes or no, sir.
publicly and repeatedly
When
by
he came to
people
me and
with
wanted to work, he
direct
said, you know, my mom and
genealogical
dad told
and
me I gotta
historical
get my own
connection
money.
to that
And I
history,
said, but when you go out to college, I
including
want you to
Medgar
make good
Everett's
choices and
own
decisions.
daughter, and
Set
it's
you up for a
one
lifetime.
Nolan's
And
family
he said, yes, sir.
themselves
That
traveled
says a
to
lot about his whole
Chicago
life.
to
It
sit
says a
with
lot about his
directly
parents, and it says a
at
lot
the
about him.
place where Till's
The thing
own
that he did
story
while he was here on
became a
earth,
turning
it
point
left a
in this
statement in a
country.
place in a lot of people's heart.
Then there was a
Life
man
is
who
precious,
actually
no
knew
matter what
Nolan
color.
personally before college.
You just didn't get to the
Someone who'd
facts
employed
of
him.
what really happened.
He
That's really what
described
it's about.
something small
The
that
facts.
says more than
It's
almost
not about
any
the color of the
statistic in
skin.
this
It's about
case could.
sticking to the facts of
He
whatever
said
it
it's
is.
rare
And if it's something
in
that
this
happened as a
generation
mistake, then just
to
let's speak
find
about it.
kids who
Let's
still
talk about
say,
it. That's it.
yes, sir,
I just
no,
like to say,
sir. And Nolan was
to him
exactly
and his soul,
that
man,
kind
rest
of
in
kid.
peace. And
When
we
he
always
came to
loved you,
this
man.
man looking for
And
work,
you did
he
everything you could
explained
while
it
you was here.
plainly.
And you did a great
His
job.
parents told
That's it.
him he needed to earn his own money.
The goal of today's
And when
protest,
he
I
was
feel like,
told
would
to
be
make
just
good
to
choices
say
heading
his
into
name.
college, decisions that would set him up
For
for
me,
a
this
lifetime,
means a whole lot
Nolan's
because I
answer
have
was
my kids
simple.
in this community too.
Yes, sir. That employer's read on that exchange
I'm a
was
mom. I have
direct.
two sons.
It says something
So
about
it
his
hit home
home,
for me.
about his parents, and
Nolan
about
Wells
who
could
he
have easily
actually
been my
was
grandson.
underneath everything this case has
I
turned
feel
him
like
into
today's
since.
testament is that we want
One more
answers.
voice
It's
from
not
that
about
same
vengeance.
gathering
It's
is
not
worth
about
including
accusations. It's about
because
the
it's the
truth and it's about
fairest, most
transparency.
balanced
We're gonna stand
framing
behind the family,
anyone in this
and
entire
that's why we're
case
out
has
here.
offered. And it deserves to close this
A lot of
section
times,
instead of anything we
these
could
stories
add on top of it.
go
Life is
unnoticed.
precious,
Because Nolan
he
Wells is
said,
not the only
no
one.
matter what
There has
color
been a
you are.
long,
What
long
matters is
string,
getting to the
historic
actual
string
facts of what
of young
happened,
black men
not the color of
losing
anyone's
their life
skin,
under very
just the truth,
suspicious
whatever it
circumstances.
turns out to be. And
I
if
am
what
the family of
happened
Emmett Till.
turns out to have been a mistake, an
And my
accident,
family is here
then
in
let's
support of
actually
what's
talk
going on
about that
because this young
honestly
man should
too,
not be dead.
instead of assuming the worst before anyone's
So I
earned the
know him
right to
personally as a kid
conclude
before he
it.
went out to college.
The
It's hard in
gathering
this generation
closed
to
with a
find
simple
kids
goodbye
that
to
still say
Nolan
yes or no,
himself.
sir.
Rest in peace,
And when he
and
came to
thank
me
you
and wanted
for
to work, he said,
everything
you
you
know,
did
my mom
while
and
you
dad
were
told me I
here.
gotta get my
That's
own
not
money.
evidence.
And I said, but when you go out
It's
to
not a
college, I want you to make good
timeline.
choices and decisions
It's just the
that set
truth
you up for a
of what
lifetime.
this case
And he said, yes, sir.
actually is.
That says a lot about his
Underneath
whole
every
life. It says a
contradiction
lot about his
we've
parents, and it
spent
says a lot
tonight
about him.
walking through.
The
A
things that he did
family
while he was here on
and a
earth,
community
it left a statement in
grieving
a
a
place in a
specific
lot of people's
person,
heart. Life
still
is
waiting
precious,
for an
no
answer
matter
they
what color you
deserve,
are.
regardless of what that
You just
answer
didn't get to
turns
the
out to be.
facts of what.
And I know I say thank you all the time, but even when I'm broken, like I still need me to give thanks, whether it's thanking the Lord for another day, thanking Him for the time we had with Nolan, or just simply saying thank you to you guys for just loving on me and my family in your prayers. And I appreciate it. I'm sorry I can't get back to everybody because it is overwhelming, but just know I appreciate you and I love you. And I'm going to go clean up and get my life together.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Moore. When I was much younger, a younger father, we always went to the mountains most of the time with our kids. And it was fun, but it's work. You know, when you're going on a vacation or maybe camping, it's labor intensive. It bears no semblance to relaxation for me. As I've gotten a little bit less tread on the tires, I love the beach now. I love going. And you know, for me, one of the things I love is to go to a particular barrier island that I've gone to for many, many years now. And to be able to sit there, and there's nothing else there. There's houses, maybe a couple of restaurants. No big restaurants, certainly no chains. But I can just relax and forget. Today, we're going to talk about a similar island, not too far away from the one that I enjoy going to. And it sits just off of the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And I'm familiar with it. The name of the island is Horn Island. And something has occurred there that has caught the attention of the nation. What that is? It's the death of a young man. Today on Body Bags, we're going to explore the death and what we know so far of Nolan Wells. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Dave, you know my affinity for the beach now. I used to curse it because I couldn't stand the sand in my shoes, but as I've gotten older, I welcome that sand in my shoes, and I welcome just listening to the waves, brother, with my shades
I love
on.
it.
I do too.
That's my happy place is the ocean.
Yeah,
I like sitting, like I've lived at the coast a lot in my life, but I like when you go to the beach on vacation and you're sitting there, hopefully overlooking the ocean. I like having that view. I don't mind paying extra for it so that I'm right there watching the waves, so that because I get up early. Everybody else would get up late, and I would get up early, take my coffee, and set it on the patio in my chair and just listen to music, read a book, and watch the waves. Watch the dolphins around 6:45. You know, the whole nine. That's my happy place.
I'm a Pelicans fan. I love watching them. They're prehistoric, and I love when they fly in formation real low over the water.
Yeah.
If I could be any bird in the world, it would be a pelican at the beach.
Okay.
But you know something, I had this discussion with you at one point in time, and you know I marvel at your career anyway. And I'd actually mentioned to you at one point in time, I always thought it'd be a really cool gig to work at a radio station that is the classic rock and roll beach state. You know the one I'm talking about? You're always searching for it when you get, or used to. It's a different world now. You're looking for that good time rock and roll just to listen to it at the beach.
Yeah.
You said it's not necessarily a desirable gig, but it just sounds like it's really cool to me now.
Here's the thing, okay? And this goes back, those of you that are under probably 35 do not have the same affinity we have for radio. It was a different animal. Radio used to actually be an entertainment thing where there were actual personalities on the air and stuff. And being at the beach, okay, you know how you go to the beach for vacation and you think, man, if I was here, I'd open up a taco stand right here and I'd be happy the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but why aren't you finding that where you live normally? Do you have a taco stand there because people eat tacos where you live? The reason is because it's not a whole lot of fun. And when you're working at the beach, okay, yes, you live there, but geographically speaking, friends, you work a full-time job.
Yeah.
All right. You're not on vacation, and you get where I'm headed. There's two types of people in radio. I'm going to stay with just radio for a minute.
Yeah.
There are the burnouts who are going to the beach just because they're done with the sales manager and they just want to have a gig where they can be done by 2:00 and at their favorite bar by 2:30.
Yeah.
That's what they're after at the beach. And then you have those who are escaping. I worked at dude, let me very quickly, and my buddy Rusty's going to laugh at this.
Yeah.
We worked at a radio station that I will not name, but we had very expensive CD players. It was right there on the coast, okay? Right there on the coast. I will not tell you what state, but this was that station that you would want to be at. Top 40 station. And we had these new Denon CD players. Back in the day, these were about $1,200 that you used in broadcast radio, okay? One of them came up missing. Now, in most stations, you have a backup, right? You have two that are in, and then you have a backup. And so a note went out. Hey, we're missing this. Did somebody borrow it? The next note, hey, if you borrowed this for some reason, bring it back. Nobody answered. So after a week, it was, okay, Monday morning, on Friday afternoon, Monday morning, Sheriff's Department is going to be here. And we're finding out who stole this felony. Okay, it's a felony. It's over $1,200 for the CD. Anyway, nobody copped to it, man. So sure enough, we bring a detective in. He sits down with all the staff members. We had 3 escaped convicts and a girl that was AWOL from the Marines that were on staff working under assumed names.
Oh, my Lord.
I'm not kidding. When we got done that day, there was me, Rusty, and the morning guy. That was it. The rest of the staff was in jail. And so that's what you have. There you go. Anyway, but the long story short is we're talking about Nolan Wells, and this is not a funny story. Nolan Wells went with some friends to the 4th of July.
Vacation, man. That's what we're talking about,
out,
brother.
Going out 10 miles to a barrier island, Horn Island, off the coast of Mississippi, and you're just going to have fun with your friends. Going to have a few adult beverages. Most of you are underage, so it's illegal, but that's what's going on. And everybody was out there doing just that. There are pictures from this day. And by the way, eyewitness accounts, very crowded at Horn Island that day. Now, Joe,
can I interject here real quick?
Please.
With these barrier islands like this, one of the things that people will do, in case you've never been, and the Gulf has quite a few barrier islands, all right, all along the rim of it. One of the things that will be done is if you have a boat that is robust enough and protective enough to get out there, we're talking about 10 miles, Dave. It's a poke, all right. You can't. Yeah, I guess you could probably see Horn Island from the shore, from the Gulf Shores area, that sort of thing, and you could let out from there. However, that's going to be on a clear day, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to have something that's going to be reliable, that's going to be robust enough, the motors and all that, to get you out there. You're going to fight against the surf and all that. Anyway, it's very common practice to get out there and then beach your boat. That's what you do. And you bring everything with you. It's not like you would I think that Horn Island in general, first off, it's kind of a protected area in the sense that there's wildlife there.
Yeah.
You have birds, all these sorts of things. And it has a park status. So, people are watching it for that purpose. But when kids go out there, or, anybody that can make it out there, you bring everything with you. There are no stores. You better be gassed up when you leave.
No electricity, no gas.
You got to get back. And when the sun starts to go down, brother, all right,
oh, man.
Which in summertime, that would probably be 8-ish or so. And you're pushing the limit there if you wait till that late to get back in. And timing is a big thing in this case. But when you go out there, you have to be completely self-sufficient. And, you want to go and enjoy yourself, lay out on the beach, just like, your vacation anywhere else. Only the trouble is you got to get back to civilization or you're going to be bumping around in the dark in the open ocean.
With nothing. So, and which is why this particular case, friends, really sticks out, because boaters, people who go to areas like this, and all of the people who are doing it, they're out there in a group. Okay. Nolan Wells was not just in a boat with 4 friends, 5 friends that went out by themselves that day. There was a caravan of boats. They were following one another out there, and they arrived at the same time. They left just before 10 a.m., like 9:56 in the morning. Now, all of this is documented with GPS. All the boats are out. Okay. You know how if some of your friends drive a clunker on the road and they barely make it to work or school or whatever, and other friends, they have a much better car that has to have liability and collision. All right. That doesn't really happen with boats here. All these boats are nice, probably cost more than my car.
Yeah.
And it's usually not the kid driving it who's in his late teens. It's probably mom and dad's, grandma, grandpa. Okay. So the boats are nice. They've all got GPS. And by the way, your phones and things like that all function to a certain degree
Mm-hmm.
in terms of tracking. They follow each other out there, and I'm going to go right off my list here. Boat departs a private dock in the Ocean Springs area for Horn Island at 10:56 a.m. GPS data records the departure. 11:14 a.m. Boats arrive at Horn Island. I put plural on that because, like I said, there was a caravan of boats.
Right.
Horn Island that day was covered up, wall to wall people. And we're not talking 50, hundreds, maybe 1,000 people on Horn Island, 4th of July day. 11:15 till 3 o'clock. This is a set time here. Nolan Wells spends that time on Horn Island with friends. And there's photos, there's videos, there's a lot of eyewitnesses that can put him on the island between 11 and 3. So there's not any battle about this. Here's the catch. One of the things Joe mentioned a minute ago is when you go out to a place like Horn Island, you have to carry everything you need with you. And you have to have everything you need to make it back to shore. This is not something people goof around about. Pretty much, if you're raised around the ocean or you spend any time on the water, there are certain respectful things you do. You do not leave somebody behind on an island that has no power or water or any kind of way to survive. You just don't do it. You stick together. It's like the buddy system in the ocean or in a pool. If you truly care about the people you're with, you do not go alone. You have somebody watching your back. And so going to an island like this, you have to have a plan to get back home, meaning whoever brung you, okay? You stay with that person. That's who you ride home with. Only on rare occasions would you go with one person and come back with another. Maybe in a different boat in the same caravan, that would happen, but you're not going to be out there without a plan. And according to what we're led to believe here, is that Nolan met a girl named Katie, and they had no background together, but that afternoon, as everybody was getting ready to head back to shore, Nolan wouldn't go. He wanted to stay with his girl, Katie, that he just met. I will get into this in a minute, but this is the story that we have to follow right now. So Nolan is on the island with Katie, and his friends, who all left together, return back to shore. The last time Nolan is publicly seen, meaning people admitting to seeing him, was 3 o'clock that afternoon. At 4 o'clock, right around there, this is really important. A private marine towing company gets a phone call from the boat that Nolan Wells rode in to Horn Island. And they say, our bilge pump stopped working. We're taking on water. We're sinking. We need a tow. The call is crystal clear, friends. We need help. And everybody is on board. So they tell the operator, they ask, is everybody safe? I mean, you've got a sinking boat, right? You're out in the ocean 10 miles out. Are you safe? Is everybody okay? The caller says yes. We were told different things about this, but here's the truth of the matter. Within a matter of minutes, the tow company calls a local captain closer to the area and explains the situation. We've got a boat, bilge pump stopped working. They're taking on water. They need a tow. Can you help? Captain says, yep, headed out that way. No worries. Before he can get there, the caller from Horn Island calls back and says, hey, we don't need a local guy out here helped us. Don't need a tow. Okay. We don't know who that person is that allegedly helped, but the call for a tow was called off, Joe. Now, at first, we were led to believe they were towed 3 miles, and then the boat miraculously healed itself, and they drove on back to shore. That's not what happened. They were never towed, according to what we know now. But the boat arrives back in Fort Bayou Beach at 5:52 p.m. So 4 o'clock, we're taking on water, need a tow. 4:31, GPS records show the boat departs Horn Island without Nolan. That timestamp is important because 4:31 they leave. 5:52 the boat reaches Fort Bayou. The GPS documents the route after leaving the island. 6:06 p.m. the boat returns to its original dock. Now, do you remember how long it took for them to get out there, Joe?
No.
They left at 9:56, arrived on Horn Island at 11:14.
Yeah.
So
just over an
18
hour.
minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, hour and 14 minutes, or hour and 18 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay, I was looking at it wrong. I was thinking it took much
No,
longer.
and
So,
that would match
yeah,
up 10
it
miles
would.
over that
Yeah.
type of water. Yeah.
Okay, so that's about right.
Yeah.
All right. Good. So now they made it back. Now at 7:19 p.m., the boat travels to Fort Bayou Boat Launch. GPS shows it being transported over land on a trailer, apparently. I mean, they don't have wheels on boats anymore or ever. And it goes to the owner's residence in Biloxi, Mississippi. That's what we know about the boat that day, going to Horn Island, leaving at 9:56, arriving back a little after 6. Now, Nolan left with them at 9:56. He was last seen on Horn Island at 3 o'clock and never made it back with them, Joe. That's the story we were told. Now, if you arrived back at dock without somebody you left with, what would you do? Would you call around and ask a few people you saw out there, hey, man, who brought Nolan back? Anything? I mean, would somebody be, you're responsible. You're the captain of the boat. Isn't it your job to make sure everybody gets back safe?
Yeah, it is. You've taken on that responsibility, and dare I say liability as well, because you're master and commander at that point in time of that craft, and you are directly responsible for their welfare if you're operating that vessel. Yeah, and I think that's the way any right-thinking investigative agency would look at this.
Let me ask you something, Joe.
Yeah, sure.
If I got your son Noah, and I said, hey, Joe, I'm going to grab Noah up in Huntsville. We're going to head to Nashville for the day.
Yeah.
And, we'll be back around 7, 8 o'clock tonight. And I get back, we do all that. And you only talk to you during the day. Yeah, we're having fun, Nashville. And I get back home and call you, or you call me. Hey, Dave, where's Noah? I haven't talked to him. I don't know, man. We left him in Nashville. Would that make any sense to you?
No, absolutely not. And
Yeah, I just left him in Nashville. And you know what? They got food and electricity there.
Yeah, they do. There's some place where you can get shelter. There's some place where you can at least take care of yourself. But, when you're on an isolated wildlife refuge, essentially, there ain't nothing there. Well, except for pelicans, perhaps, that I love so much. But they're not going to do you much good in this case, now, are they?
No.
You're simply left behind. With night approaching, the question is not necessarily what would the victim have done, but what would his friends have done? Brother Dave, I think one of the big questions, and I'm glad, you made that mention of you and Noah making a trip up to Nashville, because I got to tell you, as a father, even though he's my adult son, we talk pretty regularly, as you well know.
Yeah.
If I'm going to have questions, like, where's my kid? Where's my son? I'd like to know.
So.
And I think that's one of the big questions here. How did this all kick off relative to drawing the attention of the ones that love him?
We spent a lot of time covering this on Nancy Grace over the last week. And Joe, I will tell you, the story has evolved from what we were told at the beginning and what we know now. Here's what we know now. After the group made it back from Horn Island without Nolan, they arrived, 7 o'clock. And nobody picks up the phone and starts calling around that we're aware of. It wasn't until after 11 o'clock at night. And this is the shocking part of this. We've covered this because you keep thinking this can't be it. It's after 11 o'clock at night when Nolan's buddy Warren picks up the phone and calls Nolan's mom and says, hey, Nolan didn't ride back with us and we can't find him. Now, Joe, just so you know, these young people, they're all college age, okay?
Yeah.
And their parents their friend group extends to parents, meaning the parents know the young people and the people that are the kids they're hanging around. And so Nolan's mom picks up the phone because she knows 2 other young men who were on the same boat with Nolan. And she picks up the phone and calls their house. Hey, when did you last see Nolan? This is Warren. the friend of Nolan, calling Nolan's mom after 11 o'clock at night, Joe. He then warned, or somebody calls the Coast Guard, but they don't make a missing persons report at that time. It's Nolan's mom who starts calling around. Nolan, mom, then they do the tracking thing because, you got Life 360 that tracks phone, and then Snapchat shows when you were doing videos. And by the way, Nolan was one of these people who was always doing videos and pictures and uploading to Snapchat. Very common for him. So when Warren calls Nolan's mom, and says, hey, he didn't come back with us, she immediately hits Life 360 and finds where his phone is. And she goes to that location, and lo and behold, here are the young people that were with Nolan on the boat. It's here on land. It's not on Horn Island. And hey, who's got his phone? Nolan's mom stands there for 15 minutes while these young people who on a Friday or on 4th of July at night, 11 o'clock or so, are watching television, so they say. It takes them about 15 minutes of mom waiting on the front porch before they show up with his phone. And the first thing she does, Joe, is she looks at it because she knows Snapchat. That'll show location. It also shows everything he did that day, His phone was wiped clean for 4th of July, Joe. There was nothing for 4th of July, picture-wise. Nothing. Nothing, Joe. And that's a problem for everybody that knows Nolan. So we have no Nolan. We have his phone with friends who, again, came back without him. So mom then calls and reports him missing. So the reporting him missing happens between 11 o'clock on the 4th of July. The official report is made just after midnight on July 5th. The reason those times are important is because when you're looking at a day, you'd say he went missing midday on the 4th of July, but nobody reported missing till the next day. No, mom had him reported missing within 45 minutes of finding out he didn't come home with the guys he left with. So that is where you start on the. But Joe, if you came back and realized that your guy didn't make it back, wouldn't you be doing something to try to find him?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wouldn't you be on the phone? I mean, wouldn't you be saying, hey, man, I'm talking like not at 7, 8, 9, I'm talking at 8 o'clock at night after you've called everybody you saw on Horn Island that day. If you don't know where Nolan is, you're on the phone to his parents and back out there, searchlights or something, but none of that happened.
Yeah. And I've got questions about how people define friendship and loyalty too. I mean, just at a basic level. I don't care what your relationship is like. If there's been some kind of dust up or something like that, you're not talking about, you're down at the local Burger King and you had a disagreement in the parking lot and they rode there with you, you drove off. You're talking about a very isolated area, just about as isolated as you can get in our sense here. In the American South, going out into the Gulf and going 10 miles offshore to an island and then leaving this individual alone. And even, okay, let me throw this out to you. Okay. Let's just say you got Nolan who, and I don't know if this is the case, I'm just throwing this out there. Let's just say he's stomping his feet. He's saying, I am not leaving. I'm not getting on that boat. I'm staying right here.
Right.
Guess what my first phone call is going to be? When I get back, or maybe even when I'm in transit, as soon as I have service on my phone, I'm calling people to say, look, he was with us. He's refused to get on the boat. I can't make him get onto the boat, but I don't want to leave him out there. So that's where time is a factor here. And again, let's address it. This is the reality of it. It's about appearance. Because things can be taken certainly the wrong way. What was your purpose behind just abandonment? Why would you do that? Without at least alerting some, and maybe at this point, maybe somebody else has been contacted. To the best of our knowledge right now, we don't have that information that anyone else was contacted, that there was some kind of wide-ranging search that was going on immediately in the wake of this. That's a problem. That's a major problem.
You pointed out something a little while ago about the time of day, sunlight and what have you. And when the group returned back to shore, 6 o'clock, you still got a couple hours of daylight.
Oh, yeah.
And as you mentioned, you would, if you'd be calling his parents, hey, we could not get him to come with us. He's had too much to drink and he just refuses to get on the boat. So we came back because we got people waiting on us, but we need you to know, you make arrangements right away, anything. And you could even let's just say they were having problems with the boat at 4:30 in the afternoon or 4 o'clock. The boat was fine to get them all the way back to shore, Joe. I'm just saying something really reeks. They should have been on the phone right away. It should have still been daylight when the search or not even the search, when somebody was back on Horn Island finding out where did Nolan go. Because surely somebody would have brought him back off but he didn't. He never made it home. Now, they start the search, and the part about this that gets really frustrating is, again, we just don't know certain things that took place. But we do know that Nolan's body was found on July the 6th. Okay, so you've got July the 4th, late afternoon. He's apparently left on Horn Island.
Yep.
Nobody looks for him until after midnight. And after no sign of him, they find him on the 6th. So, Joe, the only thing we have left are stories told by those who are on the island who are drinking, and the body of an 18-year-old who was going to be playing football, wide receiver, at Southwest Mississippi Community College.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping you can tell me what his body says now that we've had 2 autopsies. Because, of course, as this broke, Ben Crump, Al Sharpton, and others immediately got involved because I guess we haven't mentioned this yet because I don't think it has a bearing on the case, but it does now because Nolan Wells is an African-American young man and the people he was with were white.
Yeah. And, we have to look at this from a scientific perspective, relative to what would the findings be after this period of time. And when I say period of time, people think, well, you're only talking about, no, I'm talking about a Gulf island in the heat of the summer. Things change. And also you're talking about tidal flow, because, his body, from what we understand, was found adjacent to the shore, right? So at any moment in time, I think my big question is, how was he missed on the 5th? Okay, because if you've got a search that's underway, how do you go through the entire day of the 5th and you don't find him at that point in time? That's a big question I want answered. I want to see the timeline. Yeah.
He was found right where he was last seen.
Yeah. And
now, if you're looking for somebody, isn't that where you start the search?
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
We know
And,
this. Yeah.
And so that's very curious as well. Why did that piece of it take so long? And I think that will be revealed to us eventually relative to how people went out. We know our friends at the Cajun Navy, were down there. And
they spotted him from the sky.
Yeah, they did. And I've seen those images, and very clearly, it's human remains.
Interesting that there was a misconception or something was misstated on the air on Nancy Gray's show about whether or not Nolan Wells had all of his clothes on, because the last known photos and the last known witness statements of him, he was wearing shorts like everybody, but not wearing a shirt. And when I was on the show, as we were talking about this, and it was reported that Nolan Wells was found fully clothed, Joe. And the guy with the Cajun Navy said, yeah, it looked like he was fully clothed from a distance. But when you got up close, and you got to remember, when you're looking at something down in the water with sand all around, you got a lot of refraction going on. You've got to, but as you got closer, and you can see this in the picture, you digitally go in and you can tell, yeah, he was not wearing a shirt. He was only he was dressed exactly as he was last seen.
Yeah.
So he was not fully clothed. That was a misreporting.
Yeah.
Happens.
It does. And again, because of misreporting, one of the issues here is that's an investigative data point. And so now this is, kind of swirling about relative to the issue of abandonment. Okay. And then you have this issue of the clothing. And the entire time, the temperature in the room is going up nationally. Okay.
Ugh.
And that's because of the conversation that's being had. And I think that there should be a conversation being had, Dave. But the problem is that when you begin to put other elements into the equation, it further, amplifies, aggravates, however you want to frame it, the discussion you're going to have. So from our perspective, from the body bag's perspective, what are we looking at relative to human remains? Well, those human remains would have had to have been collected. Now, just so everybody knows, and I love to talk about coroners and medical examiners. Mississippi is a state that has county coroners. All right. So the county, their jurisdiction extends out that far. Okay. They would either out that far or to the point where the body is brought into port. Yep.
Really? Okay. So Horn Island, that would be the county?
Right. Either one of two things happens. Either if it is state control, that means that there's going to be a county that is responsible for it. Okay.
I'll be done.
If it's a federal area and it's outside of, say, state boundaries, but would remain within U.S. federal waters, that's a federal issue. Sometimes it's the jurisdiction is dictated, and this happened to us a lot in New Orleans. I work cases coming up on boats out of South America where homicides have been committed on the boat. They put into port in my jurisdiction, and it became mine. So you can have that instance, but at any rate, regardless of the jurisdictional issue about the coroners, what's going to happen is that county coroner is not going to do the autopsy. That's going to be the state medical examiner, which facilitates autopsies for the coroners in Mississippi. And, people give Mississippi a lot of flack. They shouldn't, particularly in the area when it comes to medical legal death investigation, because they train their coroners pretty well to have a coroner system. They're always doing conferencing, they're educating their coroners, this sort of thing. And then they have a forensic pathologist that handles the state medical examiner. Now, there have been problems in the past. I acknowledge all that, but we're talking about the case right now.
Right.
So this case involving Nolan Wells would have been taken to the state medical examiner. They would have done the initial examination. Now, if I am handling a case that is let's just say that it's a waterborne case. You're on an island, you're surrounded by water, you don't know what the status of the body is. First thing I'm going to be looking for, right out of the box, is I want to know if there has been any kind of ingestion of water. All right. And when I say taking on water and ingestion of water, did you know that we have drowning victims, we actually find water in the stomach as well. It's not just simply in the airway down into the lungs. There are certain areas that we look for that are indicative of drowning. So when you approach this case, that's one of the things that has to be at the top of your list as the prosector on this case, to dig in, to try to determine, because you want to check it off, right? If you can look at it and say, okay, there's no evidence of drowning, I've ticked that box. Where does the other causal effect rest? And Dave, I got a major problem here in the sense that, as you mentioned, and rightly so just a moment ago, this kid is a collegiate football player. Have you seen the images of him? He looks like a Greek god. All right.
Yeah.
He is a strapping young man, very little fat on his body. He looks like he could run a marathon. I hear that he's a good swimmer, all these sorts of things. So I'm thinking this is probably not going to be a natural event. All right. He didn't just God called. All right. And he's gone. All right. You're not going to be able to sell that to me no matter how hard you try. Okay. So that means that our answers must rest elsewhere. And to this point, we still have yet to hear from the state medical examiner. Why? Well, because it's still under investigation. I didn't expect to hear from them. Okay. Because at this point, we still don't have toxicology back. There is an ongoing investigation, which authorities have had freely admitted to. This is something that's being looked at. I think that you and I have laid out a case why it should be looked at, because of all these inconsistencies about accountability and all these things. I want to know. I think everybody in the country wants to know at this point in time. So we're going to break down not just one, but 2 autopsies.
Let's go.
Dave, I got to tell you, when I heard that there was going to be a second examination, this is aside from the examination that took place with the Mississippi State medical examiner. When I heard that there would be a second one, an independent, I love that word, an independent examination, I was actually thrilled by that, because I got to tell you, when it comes to, if you're going to seek somebody out to do something like this, there are a lot of folks out there that purport to be one thing, and they're not, as far as experts go. Dr. Mitchell's the real deal. He's a board certified forensic pathologist. He's the former chief medical examiner for DC. He's seen a thing or two. All right. So the fact that he is the person that is doing this examination, just from my perspective, the medical legal perspective, I'm putting aside everything else relative to this because it's none of my business. I felt very, very confident in who they chose.
All right. And what did he come up with?
Well, this is what he came up with. Obviously, what we're referring to here regarding that's the big ask or the big question. When Crump got up and had his presser, he emphasized the idea that structures in the neck were missing. Okay. And I'd like to, just kind of lay it out and why they're missing. Dr. Mitchell even goes into this in his report where he states that this is a common practice. And I will concur with that assessment. It is. But these, the organs of the neck, and we're talking about the larynx, the trachea, the strap muscles probably that cover this area, which we look for hemorrhage in. You don't arbitrarily retain this stuff. Okay. It's like out of everything that you could retain, all right, you're going to say, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll retain the organs of the neck. They've done this with purpose because there's something there that they're either trying to do further analysis with at the state. Remember, they have an ongoing investigation, or they're retaining this from an evidentiary standpoint. And what that means is they want this to be used as a demonstrative tool. Now, I don't know what they have found. No one knows. As of this conversation you and I are having, no one knows what they found in Mississippi, but they have retained it. Now, I'm sure that if Dr. Mitchell had his way, he would love to have seen the specimen, but he can't. But, he goes into his report and he makes a statement, and I'm, kind of paraphrasing here. It's kind of a SOP, for this to happen. And he acknowledges that there is an ongoing investigation. But what I am thrilled about relative to not so much what is absent, I'm thrilled by the fact of the extent of this dissection that he did on Nolan. All right. Because Dave, I got to tell you, it rivals anything that we do. Let's just say that if we have a person that dies in custody, or you have somebody that is executed in a prison system. We've talked about this before, how
pretty in depth.
how extensive this autopsy is. Right. And I'm talking about, you're not just looking at the chest.
Right.
You're not just looking merely at the head. Dr. Mitchell actually did a posterior dissection. If you can imagine laying on your back, our friends out there, and having, I'm going to be very blunt here, having your back opened with a scalpel. That's what he did. Even the backs of the arms, the back, the upper chest, the posterior chest, down the spine, the buttocks. This is all in the report. Read it for yourself if you don't believe me. Down the backs of the legs. And what is he looking for? Well, he's looking for specific hemorrhage. He's looking for points of impact. All right. Guess what he found? Goose egg. He didn't find anything. This is Dr. Mitchell stating this in his report. He didn't see any areas of contusion posteriorly, with the exception of what he saw in the back of the head. Now, the caveat that Dr. Mitchell offers up in this particular case, Dave, is the idea that he acknowledges that Nolan's body is in a significant state of decomposition.
Right.
One of the problems with decomposition, and when you're looking for focal areas of hemorrhage or impact lacerations, it can be masked by decomposition. And according to him and what I'm reading, it seems as though that this is marked decomposition. I think he even uses that term. So when you get to the back of the head, all of our friends out there, take your index finger and find the knot on the back of your head. All right. That's called the occiput. The occiput. It's a bony structure. It's part of the structure of the skull. Now go inferior or below that. That area in a band behind or inferior to the occiput, right there, that's where you're seeing this discoloration. And what was fascinating to me, and I don't know if he intended to do this or whatever the case might be, Dave, I got to tell you, I'm looking at the report right now that Crump's office made available that was generated by Dr. Mitchell. You know what's significant to me, brother? This area of discoloration that he annotates on here
Right.
is actually demonstrated like a rectangle. And rectangle is not something that you associate with decomposition. Okay, rectangle implies that that's a point of impact or something happened. If we are to believe what those margins look like, just envision a rectangle. And again, I urge everybody out there, hear me right. If you go to Ben Crump's website, you can find the report there, I believe. I mean, I think that's how we got it. It's there. Look at it for yourself, okay? And you can see this. But he says, he qualifies this, Dave, by saying that he did a multi-layer dissection, and that means that you're literally taking the skin, okay, the top layer, the dermis, if you will. There's the epidermis, but the dermis, and literally peeling back gently the dermis. You look at that layer, then there's subcu fat. You're looking at the fat, you're peeling that back. Then you're going down to the muscle in that area. Though it's thin, you're looking in all of those areas. That's what a multi-layer dissection is. He went through all of this, and he is saying that decomposition is preventing him to fully assess this area for like what we would normally think about is like blunt force trauma, where you're getting focal areas of hemorrhage and all of that. So I found that quite fascinating as well relative to his findings. There have been some questions about the lungs. Okay. Now, I think that the lungs probably came with the body. All right. Now, he states that the organs of the neck are absent. Understand that when Nolan's body arrived in DC, people, I think that when we do autopsies and the organs, that they're still intact afterwards. They're not. They're mincemeat, and they're all placed into a bag. Just let's clear the air with that so everybody understands. The brain.
When you say
the
placed
lung,
in a bag, Joe, when
Yeah.
you say placed in a bag, are you talking about each individual item is placed in a bag, or are they all put together in one big bag?
Negative. They're all placed together. So, well, don't fret, because one of the things that we're really keen to in anatomical pathology is being able to discern between different organ groups. Like, I can look at a section of lung, and if I have a section of liver, it's easily discernible for me. I can look at that and say,
Right.
that's lung. I can look at that and say, that's liver, spleen, kidneys, heart's very distinctive. Brain in particular is very distinctive. So these organs are placed into a bag, and then either the bag itself is placed between the legs, or it's placed back into the chest and the breastplate is placed over it and the body is sewn back up and then it's transported. And sometimes funeral homes will literally incinerate the organs. They don't bury the organs many times with the body. I think families think that. And I'm talking about an autopsied body. Understand this is an autopsied body, not Meemaw and Peepaw down at the funeral parlor that I'm talking about. I'm not saying they're taking the organs out of natural death cases. Everybody out there understand, everybody in the back understand that. That's not what Morgan is saying. What I'm saying is with autopsied bodies, these organs are diced up and they're placed or sectioned. They're placed in a bag, the remnant. Now, out of each one of those sections that we do, we take tissue samples and they're put into a bucket. Okay. They're placed into a bucket. They're held there. They're fixed. That's when we do histology. You cut it in so you can look at it microscopically, and you have that forever and ever. Amen. Now, with the lungs, there's probably bits of the lungs in that bag, unless for some reason they merely retained the lungs because they thought it was a drowning case and they've got them intact. I've seen that happen. Maybe that did. But if you read down through Dr. Mitchell's report, he actually says that he is submitting, not they in Mississippi, he is submitting tissue samples for histology. So he's seen these organs, okay? And he doesn't go into great detail about them because they are so sectioned up at this point in time. He's merely taking samples. He's got a little bucket like this. It's full of what's called formalin, which is kind of like formaldehyde. It's different. It's something that we use in medicine and the laboratory sciences. He's placing it in there. Those are fixing right now. And what does that mean? Each one of those bits of tissue is becoming very, very firm. Then you know what they're going to do with it? They're going to encase it in a block of wax, and they're going to cut it. They're going to cut these things, and it'll be placed onto a slide, and it'll actually be stained. And there's different stains that you can place onto samples like this that, how can I say, it enhances certain features of tissue that you're looking for, okay? The biggest question, I think, that I hate to speak for you, brother, but I know that you have a question about it. I have a question. Was there a drowning? Okay. And that can be revealed in the lungs just by looking at them microscopically. That can happen. The other kind of thing that he makes note of, and this is significant, is he couldn't examine the intact stomach. Well, it's because the stomach's been dissected out. You take a pair of scissors, you run right down the esophagus. Okay. You go into the vault of the stomach, you open it up. But before you do that, when you've removed it, you tie it off on both ends, you clip it, tie it off, clip it, take it out, the stomach. The contents are retained. And that's important here, right? So when you retain that gastric content, Dave, we can first off appreciate if there's any kind of matter in the stomach that he would have ingested. That gives us an idea of when he last ate. Now, what else can we find? Are there particulate bits of medicine, like pills, anything in his system? Does it smell of alcohol? I know folks out there think that if you've ever been around a friend that was drunk the night before, they smell like they're still drunk during the day. Take that sickly sweet odor that you smell kind of coming off of somebody's body, go to an autopsy with somebody that has imbibed, open up their abdomen, open up their stomach. It's times 10 of what you smell coming off of somebody. It's this sickly sweet aroma, and it just kind of slaps you in the face. So you take a big vial and you literally do a dip out of the stomach, you retain it, and that is sent off for toxicology. It's not merely blood and urine, it's actually gastric content too, and that can tell the tape. There's another thing that you look for in the stomach in a case similar to this, because we're talking about drowning. Was there water in his stomach? So as he is on this island, and we don't know what happened when he was abandoned there or left behind, for whatever reason, all right? For whatever reason, I have no idea. You want to see if there's seawater in his stomach, not just in his airway, not just in his lungs. The other piece to this, and I know that this is, I want folks to understand this truly. One of the other things that we'd look at is inner ear. because with drowning, you actually have water in the inner ear, and that requires a dissection within the skull where you're going to go into the auditory canal and you're going to take a look in there. If there's water in there, there's a chance that this could be a drowning event. Okay. Because water intrudes into this area. You can find it in the sinuses sometimes too. The other thing that I'm really fascinated by, and Dr. Mitchell does not say anything about this, as he shouldn't, because he has no knowledge, but going back to Mississippi, I want to know if diatome testing was done. And diatoms are these little bits of algae that are, I hope that everybody will look this up and take a look at it online. There is DIATOM. And they're these, they're algae, but they have these kind of really neat geometric forms to them, and you can actually see them. Those are unique to both freshwater and saltwater, and different species exist within each. So if you're trying, like, there have been cases out there where people were drowned in fresh water and then they were taken and dumped in the ocean, but they've got diatoms that are freshwater related. Okay. So I hope that they didn't miss, to put it in downhill skiing terms, I hope they didn't miss that gate.
Yeah.
You know, as they're going through everything, I hope the people in Mississippi were able, that they're going to be doing diatome testing.
Back up to the inner ear canal. Did Dr. Mitchell observe, examine?
He didn't allude to it. I didn't see that. And I literally have, the report in front of me. He talks about the layered dissection, the posterior. He states that there's no skull fractures. Let me just make sure in real time here, guys, as we're,
Well, you know, Joe, there is something that, you know, has been made a lot of, and it's the back of the head, that people who don't do this for a living, and I am one of those, examining bodies and looking at the back of the head, saying, you know, that we've got something going on back there. You know, what could have caused this? Is there an innocent explanation for an injury or a bruise or what have you to the back of the head where this has been laid out? Am I making sense?
Yeah, you are. And let's just qualify it as an anomaly right now, because well, Dr. Mitchell is not necessarily calling it, he's not calling it an injury. He's merely saying it's an area of discoloration which he cannot assess because of the level of decomposition, but he makes note of it, draws it, and even, you know, at his strata, you know, this is something so significant for him that he wants to enter this into, you know, into the record, right? So he's actually, he sees the importance of it, as well he should. That's what he does, dude.
But because of decomposition, he cannot come out and say this was caused by bump.
And not in the definitive sense. Here's another problem that I think is, you know, people talk about these other missing organs, right? Or, you know, the stomach and you know what he couldn't assess? He can't assess the brain. And as you know, if you've got a head strike, that's problematic, brother. Because if, let's just say that if somebody fell back and hit their head, if they're struck by an object, stomped on, whatever the case might be, it is to your advantage to be able to see the brain and examine it. He doesn't state this in his report. And I'm just wondering, because this does happen, I'm wondering if the brain came with the body, or was it, if it did come with the body, the status of it would have been dissected out, or did state medical examiner in Mississippi retain it?
So ultimately, what we're dealing with here is certain aspects of Nolan's body could not be examined. They've been examined hopefully by the ME for the state of Mississippi. And so once we get that report, or once that report is made public, and we don't know when that could be, but when it happens, we can compare and contrast the two reports and maybe be able to determine something more than what Dr. Mitchell was able to come up with by missing out on certain aspects of what he would have normally had he been doing the only autopsy.
Yeah, precisely. And again, we're in kind of a wait and see hold mode, and I know people hate to hear that.
Right.
But you know, I'll put it to you this way. The medical legal community, probably out of every investigative agency out there, or type of investigative organization, they don't care about your timeline. These are scientists that you're talking about. So they're waiting on a myriad of things. You know, the old saying, we're pending toxicology. This case is literally pending toxicology right now. To say that Brother Dave and I are going to keep our eyes on this case would be an understatement. If there are any developments in this case, we will hop on, give an update, whatever the case might be, because this has captured the attention of our country. And all we want is the truth at the end of the day.
Yo, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I was looking at some other stuff, but y'all, I guess we were trying to get some. I was trying to hear some experts and what they think may have happened, which I think, in my opinion, he was choked from behind, and I believe they broke his neck, and I just believe his neck was broke. That's what I think happened to him. Bottom line, I'm sorry. I might be wrong, but I think that in the midst of a scuffle, somebody grabbed him from behind the neck and they put him in like a full Nelson. I guess that's what you call when you tighten up your neck. And, I believe that that's what happened to Nolan. I don't believe he drowned. I don't believe any of that. Was he put in the water? Of course. But somebody choked him to death. And they may have broken his neck in the process of it. You know how you like choking somebody from behind and you like, once you got that person in that chokehold, it's over with. You know what I mean? So I do believe that he was choked. I don't believe he was drowned. They keep talking about they don't know what happened to him because they, this and that. He was choked. They choked him out. And I believe they broke his neck in the midst of it. That's what I believe. Whoever they may be, but I do believe that they choked him. They choked him out, and that's why they took the neck, because they broke his fucking neck. That's what happened. And that's why you may see people around here trying to get money, because they going to be high as a motherfucker. And it might not, because, whoever it is, you know what I mean? They broke his neck. That's what happened to Nolan. Nolan's neck got broken, in my opinion. That's just an opinion. His neck got broken. He died from, they snapped his neck. Somebody choked him from behind. They got into him. They was choking him out, and they went overboard. That's why they say it. That's why you heard, is he dead? Because they were choking him out, and his neck got broken. That's just what I believe. I believe his neck got broken. That's why you have that little red, whatever that coloration on the tip of his like on the tip of his head, like that little abrasion back there behind his head. He was choked out. I'm telling you. They broke his fucking neck. That's why. It is what it is. They broke that boy fucking neck. That's sad. Yeah, if you want to know what happened to him, that's what happened to him. Didn't nobody beat him. I mean, I ain't gonna say they didn't do that, but I believe they choked him from behind and broke his fucking neck. That's why you have that one little spot with their red, because that's what I believe happened. They choked him out, and I believe his neck they broke his neck on accident. They didn't mean, like I said, it happened, and they went too far. Whoever it was enraged, and it was behind and I believe it was behind a girl. It was an argument laid up behind a girl. He got choked out because they was talking shit to each other. Somebody grabbed him behind, whoever he was arguing with. He was arguing with somebody. Somebody caught him from behind. choked him out, and just went over. I mean, it's what it is. This behind a girl. That KK girl playing games with y'all. She was here. She was there. That's to play games. Her ass was there the whole entire time, in my opinion. So it is what it is. I ain't going, and this is alleged, but I'm telling you, all of them are playing games with us. All of them. They broke that boy fucking neck. That's what the fuck happened. They broke his neck. They got into it by him effing with that girl. The boy, he got into it with someone, whoever's getting into it with him, somebody from behind, grabbed him from behind. That's why y'all see that picture of those boys behind him while whoever he was facing talking, somebody was behind him. And they putting those boys there in pictures. That's a lot of Photoshop going on. Some big dude did that. Either Elder did it or some big person did that to Nolan. They broke that boy fucking neck. And it was behind an argument behind a girl. They went too far. That's what the fuck just happened. Telling you. I'm finna get off here, but that's something to think about. I really think in my opinion, and this is alleged, I believe that somebody choked him out, broke his neck, going too far with the strangulation, and you have to be in a rage, a very barbarian human being, just in a rage like an animal, to do some shit like that. But y'all have a great night. Let me get off here, please. Yeah, have a great night.
Looking for a K-12 education that goes beyond the textbook, right from the comfort of home? Welcome to a new standard of online learning.
Beyond general education, our students dive into specialized virtual labs for real-world job readiness. Genealogy lab, historical lab, civil law, and our media and public speaking lab.
We prepare global citizens with immersive Spanish and French language tracks. And because we're proudly Florida-based and Step Up certified, families can access the elite education through state scholarship programs.
Diverse representation, academic excellence, and career readiness, delivered entirely online, wherever you are. Secure your child's spot today. Secure your child's spot today. Visit our website to enroll.